And I think one of the master skills of this game is convincing a seller of the actual value of their business, which is always less than what they wanted for their business. And I show them every which way businesses are valued, how banks are going to look at this, how buyers are going to look at this. And I just bring a lot of evidence and credibility to the valuation process. I show them how the sausage is made, of how business valuation is done. And then if they're ready to sell for what I think is a realistic value after I explain it, then we take it to market and get it done.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Small Business Mentor podcast, where we shine a light on the black holes of business growth with your host, Alan Pentz. In each episode, we explore the leaps and bounds entrepreneurs make as they push their businesses beyond the 1 million mark into the realm of professional sustainable growth. Stay with us as we navigate the journey from brute force to finesse.
So welcome to the pod today. We've got Clint Fiore coming to us from the great state of Texas. He is a business broker and the owner, CEO, I guess, of Bison Business. Is that right?
That's right.
Excellent. Welcome to the pod, Clint. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Alan. Been looking forward to it.
Cool. So tell us how you're like, you went to flight school or you went to Embry-Riddle, I saw.
Yeah.
And you're a pilot. You did all this other stuff. So how'd you get into business brokering?
A meandering path. I originally wanted to be a pro pilot. You know, that was what I went to college for. I have a degree in aeronautics and always wanted to, since I was a kid, fly airplanes. And then I think about halfway through school, two things happened. One was I was in a plane crash, which gave me a lot of perspective on life at a young age, and sidelined my flying for a while I sorted through crash investigation and all that kind of stuff. And eventually did get cleared and returned to flying and finished my degree, finished all my ratings, became a flight instructor. But along the way, after some soul searching, learning about myself, and then learning more about the industry, I realized I'm just not really wired to be a cog in a big machine, which I think what ends up happening if you're an airline pilot or a pro pilot. It's a very structured, regulated environment. And I'm a very creative, entrepreneurial type of person that doesn't really fit. And so I kind of discovered that I liked airplanes and I liked flying, but I didn't really like the flying career. And a lot of my friends that went ahead of me into that career reported back that it was very structured and kind of miserable, and you don't really own your time and control your life. And I was putting myself through school doing sales and marketing and more creative work, and just discovered I kind of had a knack for sales. I enjoyed business. And so by the time I graduated school at a top aeronautical university, that I realized this isn't really the career path I want to go. So I decided to go into business instead. And with the goal of, okay, I don't want to waste all this investment I did into learning how to fly and all this education. So one day I'm going to buy an airplane and fly for myself as a business person and put my education and training to work. And it took me a long time, but I finally was able to do that a few years back. And now I'm a partner on an airplane and I'm able to fly around for business and pleasure and enjoy flying as kind of an integral part of everything I do in business.
So then where did the brokering come in? How'd you get from flight school to brokering?
Yeah, I went into various, sales and marketing jobs after school. One of the first ones I did was I was an aviation insurance agent. So that was kind of a good fit for my sales background and aviation background. And then after a few years of that, I feel like I kind of reached a plateau where I was the number one producer in a pretty large agency, was making a good living, but I was just finding myself repeating the same year over and over again. And again, felt like, okay, I'm again a cog in a big machine here, and I'm getting all these creative ideas. And I was reading business books, and I met a friend through my church that had this crazy business idea. And he had patents on designs for a product that was a hunting and outdoors product. I helped him write a business plan. And then it was kind of keeping me up at night, thinking about it, dreaming about starting a business with my friend. And I ended up raising an angel investor with him and quit my stable, secure insurance job to build hunting blinds in a small town in Texas. and started a manufacturing company with angel investor backing. Went from no entrepreneurial experience, basically just sales and marketing experience, to helping run a 50 employee manufacturing company with a bunch of friends that didn't know what we were doing. Made every mistake in the book, grew it pretty large, pretty quickly, and then quickly got bought by the angel investors. Bought us out and flipped the company to private equity, and I kind of got pushed out after about 2 years. And then all of a sudden, I had a little bit of money for the first time in my life, but no plan B. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to go back to insurance. I didn't want to go back to a JOB. And so the thing that came naturally was like, all right, next time I want a business that, instead of all the stress of investors and debt and the high pressure environment of a startup, I thought, you know what, I should just buy a business that's already making money.
You didn't go to Stanford and take a whole class on it?
I don't think much of this ecosystem existed at the time. This was 2013 or so when I sold that company. And I just was Googling like how to buy a business or businesses for sale. And I found Biz Buy Sell, and I found business brokers for the first time. And I just stumbled into this ecosystem where I've now made my living. I didn't have this vocabulary at the time, but I was a self-funded searcher before that was cool, before it was a thing. And ended up striking out for a while, like trying to find something good. Everything I would fall in love with on the internet, I would find out that it already sold, or the financials weren't what they said they were in the ad, or I couldn't get callbacks from brokers, and I got the runaround a lot, and I couldn't get people to take me seriously. And I just got so frustrated with the process of trying to buy a business that one day I just kind of snapped and said, there's got to be a better way. Like, somebody needs to do this better. And my frustration with business brokers is part of what fueled me to like start my own. Was I kind of thought, I could outcompete these bozos, and I could sell businesses, and I'm passionate about business. And so that's when I really started doing a deep dive into all things M&A and business brokerage. And I think the capital from the sale of my first company is what gave me the luxury of time to learn. And so I took about a year. I became a business evaluator. So I got like certified on business appraisals and valuations, because I knew I needed to I didn't come from like a finance background. I needed to learn the valuation side of it. So I really sharpened my technical skills. And then I pursued every trade designation I could. I really leaned on trade groups to get industry certifications and learn M&A and business brokerage from the top trainers, and get as many credentials as I could, because I was young. I didn't have a lot of experience in this space. I was just good at sales and marketing, and I had some entrepreneurial experience now. And I knew if I could just learn the technical aspects of this, that I could do well in this space. It took me about a year of learning, and then I finally launched in 2014, or no, I guess it was 2015. So I made the decision in 14 and went on that learning journey, and then launched an independent brokerage in 2015. And I've been doing that for 9 years now.
So like, how did you get clients? Like when you started out, that seems, you have no referrals. You weren't part of a bigger broker. You didn't go work somewhere and then go on your own. So like, how do you break that seal?
My thought was, I'm going to do appraisals and consulting while I work on building a pipeline of deals, because I knew it would be a while before you close your first deal. And so I got certified to do a consulting program to help people grow their business's value. And then I got valuation credentials to do valuations for banks and other things. But as I launched with those things, like appraisals, consulting, and brokerage were my go-to-market income streams, I was surprised how quickly I got my first engagement and how quickly I closed my first deal. In fact, 50 plus deals later, my first deal was still my fastest one I ever did. And I felt like it was the grace of God. It was like a major blessing. But I think it was through Facebook. I just announced, hey, here's my new website. Everybody, here's an announcement. I'm now a business broker. And sure enough, one of my good friends was like, oh my gosh, I'm moving to Tennessee, Clint, and I've got a pest control company here and I want to sell it. Can you help me?
You got pest control in your first one, man? That's a home run, man.
It was my full attention, like I got it, and he listed it with me in one meeting, and I sold it 90 days later. So it was less than 90 days from listing to closing. And they're still in business, and I'm still friends with the buyer. And it's still a really fond memory of my first deal.
And then what did you do to like really build the pipeline? Like after that, obviously you had a good one under your belt, so that made you feel good.
Once I kind of had my first one under my belt, it felt like it started rolling. A lot of it came from, I've always been a good steward of social media and email. And so when I was launching the angel back company, for example, I had a pretty large list of friends and family and folks that were business people I looked up to that I had pitched on investing with me, and I had kept their information, and a lot of them became my first like buyers for businesses, because that's part of what even attracted me to this is when I was in that previous experience of raising angel investment. That's hard to do. Like raising angel investment, I've done it twice. I've raised 7 figures twice for pre-revenue startups. And that's like one of the hardest fundraisers you can do, is because you're just kind of betting on people with an idea. The most common no I got from rich people that I was pitching on an angel investing was like, Clint, that sounds like an exciting idea. I wish you the best, but little too risky for me. Like what I'm really looking for is an established business that's already making cash flow. And if you ever find something like that, let me know, because I'll be a buyer. And I kind of just filed that away in the back of my head from like 2010, 2011, when I was leaving insurance and going into my first startup. I was like, oh, rich people really like buying established businesses that already make cash flow. And so I just kind of, when I was searching for my next thing, that was one of the core ideas that brought me to brokerage, besides the low quality competition. I also have heard through books and other people that are wise that I follow is like, if you solve problems for rich people, you'll do well. Like instead of trying to reinvent the wheel with all these creative ideas, is there anything that you've heard over and over again from rich people that they wish? And I had heard that many times of, if you find a good business that's already established and making cash flow, let me know, because I'm a buyer. And so, yeah, a lot of those folks were referring in opportunities. And so it was really like social media, Facebook and LinkedIn, my referral network of angel investors, and then other just kind of like, I joined every chamber of commerce near me, networked like crazy, joined, lead generating networking groups, and just kind of did the whole, shake hands and kiss babies, politicking thing, and let everybody know. And there's just not much competition here. And so most people I talked to didn't know a single other business broker. And so before long, just as someone who knows a lot of people and lives kind of publicly on social media and stuff, I became, probably 1,000 or 2,000 people's go-to, oh, if you ever need a business broker, talk to Clint. And so it was really like that warm network that kind of got me started. And then it just kind of snowballed from there.
And it struck me when you were talking, I guess, knowing those rich people, they want to buy, right? Mostly. So is it easier to find those buyers than the sellers of the quality business? And do they come the same way?
Way easier. Yeah. Buyers are the easier part of this equation. I feel like I've got 10,000 buyers for every seller, ballpark. In fact, if I could have an unlimited stream of sellers, I'd probably rule the world, because it's like, that's the hard, because I feel like I have a very good knack of stewarding buyer relationships at scale and always having ready quality buyers to plug into good opportunities. And it's really just a matter of finding those good opportunities. And I think one of the master skills of this game is convincing a seller of the actual value of their business, which is always less than what they wanted for their business. Like, I think that's almost the whole ball game here is, getting in front of sellers and in a credible, tactful way, letting them know that their baby's kind of ugly, or it's not, no, there's anything wrong with their business. It's just not worth a crazy multiple that they thought it was, and explaining how this works. And I'm kind of naturally a teacher. And so I just take it as an educational process. I use the valuation skills I learned. I show them every which way businesses are valued, how banks are going to look at this, how buyers are going to look at this. And I just bring a lot of evidence and credibility to the valuation process. I show them how the sausage is made, of how business valuation is done. And then if they're ready to sell for what I think is a realistic value after I explain it, then we take it to market and get it done. If they're not emotionally ready to accept that number, or they think they believe me, but they just need to work on their business to get that value up a little bit, then I give them some pointers, send them back out into the world to work on their business, and then usually they come back and sell when they're ready. So it is kind of a relational farm sometimes.
That must be the best sale, right? Is somebody who's improved their business and hit what you told them to hit, right?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's what they need. Sellers oftentimes have their magic number. It's usually like 1 million, 2 million, or 5 million is what.
Does it have any relation to how much money they make? Do they ever do like, oh, I need 5 or 10 times, or it's just like it's a top line number?
It's usually just like the number they think of like this would be the number that I'd happily walk away and feel like I'm okay. But it's always like, it usually rounds to a notable $1 million mark. It's just a psychology thing. And so if you whenever you value someone's business, if you value it and you're like, man, this is going to be a $3 million business, and you find out what they wanted 5. If it's a $500,000 business, you find out they wanted 1 million. It's almost like predictable. Like they want that next level up. And it's probably if you think it's worth 6 million, they wanted 10. And there's these kind of tiers. And so being able to tactfully say, yeah, I know you want 10, but I only think you're going to get 6. And here's 10 really convincing reasons why I can get you 6. Or if you make it look like this, I can get you 10. And sometimes that's all they needed, was to kind of know how that works. And then it's like some of these entrepreneurs, it's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. Once they know how to get that 10 million, that they wanted, something switches in their brain, and they go from, holy crap, my entire life as a business owner, all I've been trying to do is prove to the IRS I don't make any money so I can save on taxes, right? Well, once I tell them, here's what buyers want to see that you can prove you do make for you to get that type of number, then all of a sudden it switches to, now I'm not trying to prove I don't make any money, and I'm trying to prove I do make money. And they just like finish really strong and can show that number. Now that they have a target, they can go hit it. And so, yeah, sometimes they do go out there and get it done and then come back and we get them their number.
Always the curse of spending $1 to save 40 cents. That's one of my mentors, Greg Crabtree, always says. So the sellers are harder to get, but they come through the same network. Is that like through your social media and through people just knowing you're a broker? So if someone's going to sell, they say, hey, go talk to Clint, kind of thing.
Yeah, today, 9 years in, it's about half is coming through referrals. And that's from previous sellers that have worked with us, and they tell their friends, like, had a great experience with Bison. Whenever you sell, you should use them. We get referrals from our existing clientele, buyers and sellers, but also from CPAs, attorneys, commercial realtors, commercial real estate folks, wealth management people. So like between all those, warm network of professional advisors and our former clients, we get lots of seller referrals. But then we also get about half through direct sourcing through SEO and direct messaging on social media.
What do you find that sellers are searching when they find you? If that's not part of the secret sauce.
Sell my business, sell my pest control business, sell my business, Dallas, like whatever their city is. Sometimes they're searching business broker / my city, things like that's what they're generally searching for.
What percentage do you think that come in where it's like you say your business isn't going to sell unless it's, you do these things? So first, what do you think, like how many people come in that you just can't sell a business?
As long as they're making profit, and I can realistically believe it's not entirely based on the seller being there, they're sellable. But we lose a lot because of the valuation gap. The ones that almost can't be sold, regardless of the financials, are ones that really revolve around the owner. There's a lot of small businesses. There's millions of them that I would say they're really just self-employed people with extra steps. Like
They're an employee, but they just happen to pay themselves. Right.
right. So sometimes we'll get a really nice looking set of profit and loss statements where top line's millions of dollars, bottom line is $1 million or $800,000, and it's somebody who's been doing it forever. And you get excited about the numbers, but then you find out how they're making it, and it might be a custom home builder that has all this reputation in the industry, and people go to them because of their name and their quality service, and then they sub everything out, and they make the spread on these 10 custom homes they build every year where they make over $100K each, and they're making $1 million a year, and that's great. Like, anybody looks at those financials, a banker or the IRS, and they're like, this is a nice small business. But I look at that and I'm like, you really are just a very successful self-employed.
So what percentage do you think is that?
It's probably like more than half of small businesses.
That would be my guess. And do those people approach you a lot, or are they just end up?
They usually don't. Like we kind of have done a good job over time educating our referral sources about what we're looking for, and educating through our social media and our website and other things is that we're really looking for, we typically say like at least 5 employees. We want to have at least 3 years in business. We want to have transferable earnings that aren't, that can, a buyer could walk into by filling your shoes. So we want to either hands-off owner or one that could be readily replaced out of business. And because of our education, I'd say only like 10 to 20% of folks that come to us are in that unsellable category from either they're losing money or they don't have a transferable earning stream.
And then when you get them in, so talk to me about some of the averages on what people are charging, percentage of the deal. If I think there's some benchmarks out there in the industry. You don't have to talk about your specific, and what size deal. Yeah.
I would say there's 2 ball games. There's lower middle market and Main Street. Lower middle market is typically that 7 figures and up EBITDA range where the multiples are higher. It's beyond the size of SBA lending. Most of the buyers are institutions or strategic buyers. They're other companies or family offices or private equity groups, or these kind of like institutional type of buyers typically. And then at the like under 5 million range, I would call that Main Street. And that's where you're typically valuing the company not on EBITDA, but on seller's discretionary earnings, which is kind of like what is the owner making in pay, perks, and benefits, plus what's the net profit of the company. It's kind of like EBITDA plus. And the multiples for SDE or discretionary earnings are typically lower than the EBITDA multiples of middle market. There's typically a very tight value range in Main Street that's driven by SBA lending math. So it's pretty easy for me to explain how all this works because most of the buyers on Main Street are individuals that a lot of them are leveraging the SBA 7A loan program, and they've got very strict guidelines of how far they can push the valuation before it breaks that model of that math.
It brings a lot of discipline to the market, right? Because there's just no flexibility. There's no other capital source, right? To some extent, you can tell a seller, hey, you're not going to get that because it's all going to be SBA buyers. They're not going to be able to do it. So
I can know in 2 seconds on Biz Buy Sell or something if there's a for sale by owner deal they want $3 million, and I can look at it and be like, that's worth $1 million tops. It's going to sit there forever, and it's never going to sell. You can come back to that same listing 6 months later, it's still sitting there. It's never going to sell until they, kind of get in line with the standard multiples of the Main Street range. And so once you get SDE, which is net profit plus the owner's pay, perks, and benefits on a normal year, plus the EBITDA add backs, interest, depreciation, amortization. You can almost reliably say that most Main Street deals trade between 2 to 4x SDE. Whereas middle market has a much wider range. So I would say quality middle market companies almost start at about a 4x of EBITDA, but they can go up a lot higher depending on the size and the industry. And some of the favored industries that have really heavy competition among private equity are getting, much higher multiples. They're getting 10x's and 12x's and popular recurring revenue service industries. Some of them are getting really wild multiples. And so for me, my company, it kind of straddles those two worlds. So like most of the deals we do are between 1 and 10 million, and we can stretch it up to, maybe 20, 25 million or down to maybe 500,000. And so we're often doing deals that are in the gray area between those worlds, or we might have, a seller that's from one world and a buyer that's from another world. And we find ourselves having to be bilingual. Like we have to be able to speak the two different languages of those two different types of deals. And when we're talking about this industry, I think there's a real soft spot in the market right where we've set up shop in that kind of like quality, I would call it premium Main Street to very lower middle market. And that's where I've set up Bison Business to really play on our playground. Is I found there's a lot of competent middle market boutique M&A firms that they've got analysts on staff. They take big retainers to build their book. And, so a lot of those folks are asking big retainers, and then they're working on $100 million deal. They might list you and run it through their process, but you're like their least important deal, and you don't get their best people and you don't get their best service. And then a lot of their core customers, which are the institutional funds, you might be a little bit too small for their favorite buyers. And so you're kind of like out of their core competency a little bit, and you're not getting their best people or their best attention. And you're paying big referral, and you're paying a big retainer for not getting that great of a service. But at the same time, you don't want to take your $9 million company to the Main Street wet behind the ears broker, maybe that's also selling the neighborhood dog walking business and the nail salon down the street for $200,000, and doesn't have an understanding of the complexities of the middle market, which includes like a deeper conversation about working capital that isn't constrained by the SBA math of Main Street. And so they kind of need that knowledge of middle market, but for a premium Main Street company, so like, I think that there's a real good opportunity if you can give kind of the fee structure of Main Street, which is typically more of a success fee-based fee versus retainer-based fees. And you can be conversant in the sophisticated world of middle market, but still give that great attention to that, 7-figure deal, that there's like an underserved niche.
So on the fees, so I know they range, for 4 to 10, and maybe there's a minimum and there's retainers. And so how does that usually work?
Just in general, like I know the industry pretty well, like it's the very small brokers that do a whole bunch of little bitty deals. They are often charging 10, 12, 12.5% for like the 6-figure deal. Like if it's, a $300,000 deal, for example, they're often trying to make 30 or 40 grand doing that deal. Once you get, in the 1 to 5 million range, a lot of the fees are in the like 8 to 10 range ish. And then once you get to that 5 and up, then they usually get down into the single digits. Most custom quote, like they'll value your company, and then they'll tell you, hey, here's what I think I can get you, and here's what I'm going to charge you. And some of the middle market shops will charge a flat percentage. So they might charge 7, 8, 4, 5, 6, depending on how big the deal is, and also depending on how much they ask in retainer, and if they credit that retainer against the closing fee or not. So those are all things you need to know. But everybody's kind of sets their own. It's not like real estate where there's a standard that everyone uses.
And then there's that one. What's that one model where it's like X on the first million?
That's called the layman model. Yeah. And the layman isn't very popular anymore. In fact, most people are doing double layman. If anything, that's where it's kind of like 10% on the first million and 8%. And instead of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it's more like 10, 8, 6, 4. And so, but yeah, it usually averages out where I have a friend that recently did $100 million deal. And I think that was at about 4 or 5%. And that's a large fee.
And at that level, like the retainer might be credited back. When do you get to be cool and call yourself an investment banker? When is that? What size do you have to be to?
I think a lot of investment bankers call themselves that once they kind of have the FINRA licensing. They're doing kind of middle market transactions, but also raising money for fundraisers at different levels. I went years as a business broker not having zero clue what an investment banker was. I just thought it was a business broker that did bigger deals and wore uglier jackets.
So if you're doing a $5 million business, say you're doing like, 7-8% on it, how many of these deals can you get closed? You said 50 deals in 10 years, right? So is it, how many do you usually end up? I mean, I know there are different sizes, but
doing the 7-figure deals where I play, like, I feel like a great year, I'm doing like 5 to 10 closings. But I have friends that are doing 6-figure deals that are like Main Street, just formulaic. I have people that are bigger than me that are doing bigger deals, that they're doing 2 to 4 deals a year. And then I have folks that they're doing smaller deals than me that they can do 20 or 30, 40. Like they're doing a closing a week sometimes. But they're doing it for smaller dollars. And to me, that sounds like hell because I mean, any deal, I don't care if it's 30 million or 300,000, it's somebody's baby. It's got emotion. They're all emotionally charged. Some of the most drama filled deals I've ever done were some of the smallest deals. And some of the times it's these people's, a self-made bootstrap person that started from nothing and they've got hardly anything to show for it. And the difference between 200,000 and 300,000 for them is a huge swing in their retirement prospects, or, it could be life-changing money for them. And they're going to fight tooth and nail for every single dollar. Whereas sometimes someone that's got, a $6 million company that's built up a 8-figure net worth already, selling it for 5.5 or 6.5 isn't that big of a difference.
So try to be that guy. And the way you do that is you don't spend $1 every year to save 40 cents.
Yeah.
You take it home and you just pay the IRS, right?
Exactly.
So that's interesting. So you can really, if you're kind of in that middle market spot or that, not middle market, the in between Main Street and lower middle market, you're doing 5 to 10 of these a year. This is a multi-million-dollar business, and most of that is you, right? I guess you have a few people, right, at this point.
No, I have staff. So like we have a real team and we have an office and real overhead. I would say like on a great year, I've never made more than about 50% net margin. And on slimmer years where I don't get enough across the finish line, it might be 10, 20%. But I've always got a substantial amount of overhead, and you kind of get to know, like, I've got to do so many deals before I'm like, I've got all my staff paid and I've got all my overhead paid. And then at the next deal, I'm going to be in the money here. I'm going to be in the profit.
This industry has like the downside. I guess if you're really small and just doing your own deals, it's probably, it's just cash and carry. Like you don't have that much to support when you start out.
There's a lot of brokers out there that they're just one-man shows. And they basically just have some software subscriptions and some insurance costs and things like that, but not much else. Travel, entertainment, not much. But the ones that I think are the modern brokers that I think are really making an impact on the industry and are really performing head and shoulders above the one-man shows are ones that are building teams and they're building what I would call a high tech, high touch brokerage that combines good CRM management and digital data room practices and database management with a team that helps every step of the way. So when we as a group are firing on all cylinders and I'm working 15 deals at a time and closing 10 in a year, I'm not touching the deal that often. As the kind of quarterback of the deal, when I'm quarterbacking one, I'm coming in at a few key moments. So I'm coming in to kind of like close on the engagement, present the valuation, and walk them through signing up with us. But usually the team has received the lead, explained how we do business, got their financials in, analyzed it, built me a presentation, valued the company, and I've got a presentation built for me. And I've never met the seller. I don't know what's going on. I just get it like right when it's ready to engage. And then I walk the seller through that engagement process, evaluation, presentation. And then once they sign up, I go away again and they go to a packaging phase where the team builds the sim and gets it show ready, like builds the data room, builds the sim, gets ready to go to market, builds the copy for the one pagers and the ads, and they're the ones that put the deals on the websites and build the support materials and all that. And they put it out there, and then the phone starts ringing and people start signing NDAs, and then they're the ones answering the phones, interviewing buyers, filtering folks, seeing who's the contenders and the pretenders, and then getting the right people the sim and the confidential information, following up, see if they're interested, asking preliminary questions, answering preliminary questions, and then getting me the folks that are ready for like a meet the owner meeting, and then I come in and I'm doing the facilitating of the buyer seller meeting. And then I might follow up after that to negotiate the LOI. But I'm just coming in at those stages,
Operation and process. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. Like, it's too time consuming to do all of the administrative.
Well, and I was going to say, you're you have a lot of gates in the beginning. That's if someone doesn't really want to sell or isn't committed, they're not going to give the financials. They're not going to do all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So by the time you're hitting it, it's a pretty clear. I mean, by the time you're hitting that person, the likelihood that they're going to actually transact has got to be super high at that point.
Yeah. I think the reason this is such a tough gig is because a really good broker has to be a crack finance like nerd, but they also have to be good bedside manner and like therapists and psychologists to these people going through this big emotional journey of selling their company that they got their blood, sweat, and tears into, and there's just so much emotion to it. And typically people are either like that people person that's really good at managing the human side of these deals, or they're really a strong nerd, but the best nerds often don't have the best bedside manner and people skills. There are some phenomenal brokers that are like awesome at both, and they'll stay busy and successful all the time, but they can't scale that. It's super hard to scale because you're doing both sides of that, and it relies so much on that. So I have learned the nerdy part of this through training and effort, but I'm more naturally a people person. And so I now delegate the analysis and the administrative aspects of this so that I can be in those people meetings, which is where really my zone of genius. And then we kind of have, as we scale and grow a team, we kind of know, is it time for a nerd or is it time for a people person? And we do the deals like an assembly line and handing them off to the appropriate person. And that also lets us have a real life. Once you have a couple people and a couple nerds, then one of you can take a vacation and you're never nerdless, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Because I mean, the typical thing I would think it's like one man show, kind of runs around, does this, got all the relationships, and then like every time these deals go haywire all the time, right? And there's one person that can run in and save it. So it sounds like you've really got it processed out, and
Yeah.
I'm sure there's stressful times, but you can kind of share that burden and it doesn't turn into a
for my
crazy
first like 5 or 6 years in this industry, it was without fail. Every Christmas Eve, I was on some bullcrap save the deal call on Christmas Eve with lawyers, because there would always be this deal that wanted to close December 31st at midnight. And for one reason or another, they wanted to close it on the 31st and fund it on the 1st for tax reasons or accounting reasons or whatever. And someone would find, usually a lawyer, would find some issue, and we would have to have an all hands call on Christmas Eve that was stressful. And I'm having to leave my family, go out to my garage and talk to a bunch of lawyers about some bull crap. and I haven't had to do that in a few years, you know? And so like, I'm very blessed that like we've now got enough of a team that there's more than one of us that can don the Superman cape when we need to and can jump in.
You've kind of blown up on Twitter, X, and in other social media. It sounds like you've been working at it for a while. How much of your business is just still local versus like regional, national?
My company used to be called Texas Business Buyers. It's now called Bison Business. Twitter is really what made me rebrand, because I was a regional Texas sell-side firm, and about half of our business was just local to me, which was San Antonio area. And then I also did deals in Dallas, Houston, and all the other metros, because my plane allowed me to get anywhere in Texas in an hour or so. And so like I would work on deals in Midland or San Angelo or Abilene or Amarillo where there's no business brokers. There's nobody to help them. Texas has concentrations of brokers in the big 4 cities in like Dallas, Austin, Houston, San Antonio. But a lot of the mid-tier cities that I was mentioning, there's like 10 cities that have more than 100,000 people that aren't the big 4. And there's almost no business brokers in them. And so I was becoming the go-to broker for most of those mid-tier cities and flying around to them. And we built a great business. But as soon as I got on Twitter, now X, I started teaching and telling stories and writing threads, and just kind of blew up. And I kept getting the same messages over and over, which was a clue that I needed to change. The messages always said something like, Clint, I love what you're doing. I wish I was in Texas so I could, buy a business from your firm. There's no good brokers here. I don't like business brokers, but I like you. Who's the best? Like, who's the equivalent of you, or who's the equivalent of Texas Business Buyers in Colorado, or who's the equivalent in California? And I found myself just referring business to my friend group of like quality brokers from all over the country all the time. And it was like, my business was Texas sell side, but every freaking person that messaged me all day long on Twitter, none of them they were all buyers and national, and very little Texas. And so I was like, if I'm ever going to capitalize on all these eyeballs and attention, I'm going to have to change my model a bit and start offering services outside the state of Texas, and also start doing some buy side stuff and not just sell side stuff. And so when we rebranded about 2 years ago to Bison Business, that was a switch. We switched from regional sell side to national buy and sell side. Along with what happened with Twitter, we also like got blessed by COVID in a way, because all of a sudden everyone got super comfortable doing business over Zoom, and it didn't become as important to go shake hands with the buyers and sellers every time. And we started doing deals fully remote as advisors and just doing lots of Zoom meetings. And once everyone got comfortable with that, it really helped us open the door to do deals wherever. So now we just kind of cherry pick the people and opportunities we want to work with in states that we're able to work in, which is most states. And then we will refer out certain states to other brokers that need to have a local presence.
Now, do you get sellers coming in through X ever? I mean, it seems like, yeah. So
we just signed up like 4 in the last 4 weeks. Wow. And I think 3 of those 4 were from X. So they're coming in for sure.
And then how do you, like on the buyer side, I guess the issue is you don't want to waste a lot of time, rooting around in thousands of businesses. Are they actually going to close? Are they serious? Like, it must be harder to represent the buy side, I would assume.
It is, yeah. So when we switched to Bison, we started experimenting with different buy side services, and the problem with buy side, and the reason not very many brokers do buy side advisory is they'll just like run you ragged, looking at 100 different deals but never close on one. That's why almost every brokerage says, "Screw that! I'm just going to do sell side exclusive engagements because I know if this buyer doesn't buy, someone else will, and eventually I'm going to sell this thing." Whereas if you engage buy side on a success fee only basis, you may look at 100 deals and close zero. And so when we go buy side now, we have a new kind of fee arrangement where we actually take a small fee when we engage with someone buy side at analysis. So we kind of charge to. So we have a program called Buyer Sherpa, for example, and the Sherpa program means, all right, I found a deal from another brokerage. I don't know if I trust them, or I found a deal off market. The seller doesn't even know what it's worth, but they like me and they want to sell to me, but we need someone to help. Or I need someone to look over my shoulder and make sure this thing's legit. I want somebody on my side of the table because most of the time buyers aren't represented. Like their sellers have a broker often, but buyers are just kind of, especially first time buyers, are at a huge disadvantage, experience wise and information wise. And so we created a program where it's like, okay, you pay us a small fee and we'll analyze the deal, look over your shoulder. We'll help you negotiate it. And if we get it negotiated and get an LOI signed, then you pay us another milestone fee at LOI. And then if we get it all the way to closing, you'll pay us a success fee at closing. So it's kind of like a phased approach where you're not in too deep fees wise unless the deal closes, but we have some protection for our time by getting some milestone fees along the way. So I started doing that, and I'm encouraging other good brokers I know because I just feel like there's a huge need for that. And I'm hoping I can get other good quality sell side brokers to start offering that type of fee arrangement to look over buyers' shoulders.
So yeah, talking about the industry now, it's obviously talked about the Main Street, lower middle market. There's all these trends going on. Where are you seeing the industry going over the next few years? I mean, even from like, how is AI going to change it, and how, what's the future of business brokerage?
I came in, I'm kind of visionary, kind of tech background. When I first came into this, I was hoping to almost put brokers out of business by going super high tech. And I could imagine a world where brokers aren't that necessary because AI could just kind of read the financials, parse that against, the valuation is mostly math. And I could imagine it's AI spitting out an accurate value and basically like standardizing this stuff and making it very high tech. But I didn't know what I didn't know until I got in the trenches and started doing deals. And what I realized along the way is I don't think advisors are going away anytime soon, because there's two huge problems with going completely high tech and eliminating advisors. One is garbage in, garbage out, and the lack of quality control at the accounting level and the bookkeeping level of the small business completely screws anyone's attempts to automate this. And so the internet-based companies, I think, are better. So there's a few shops out there. I'll give them shout outs on this because they're phenomenal. FE International, Quiet Light, Empire Flippers. There's like a handful of them that they sell internet businesses.
Yeah, like acquire.com.
Yes, yeah, Acquire, Flippa. When it comes to like digital only businesses, there's only like 4 business models. And it's all really readily verifiable, right? Because you can go to their Stripe accounts or their Shopify accounts, their Amazon accounts, their Google Analytics accounts, and you can get all of the data that buyers need to verify to feel comfortable that from trusted third parties. And then they can run that through hyper accurate valuation algorithms to give you kind of like a very narrow range of what this is going to trade for, because there's only a few amount of business models and there's very readily verifiable data they can verify up front, right? But when it comes to like Main Street and middle market random businesses and brick and mortars, you get QuickBooks accounting and you get tax returns, and the quality is all over the place, and you don't know if you can trust that. And so a machine, if you put garbage into a machine, garbage comes out. And so you have a fundamental garbage in, garbage out problem with a lack of quality bookkeeping and accounting processes. A, and then B, the other kind of intractable problem is the emotional journey of all of this. And I would say a huge part of a business broker's fee is earned keeping a seller from emotionally sabotaging themselves and their own deal, and from listening to bad advice from their buddies and their lawyers and CPAs along the way that all want to tell them what they want to hear but won't tell them what they need to hear.
Was it you that said, like, your buddies on the golf course are always going to say, oh, no, I wouldn't have sold. I would have sold for more than that. And then it was like, would any of you bought that company? And they'd be like, no, I'm not going to buy that company.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I get, if I had hair to pull out, I would pull out my hair with CPAs. I love CPAs, but stay in your lane, CPAs. Like, that's what I always want to say. Well,
you're the one saying the QuickBooks all suck, so they're getting pissed. They're coming over to your side.
Yeah. So the problem with CPAs is, like, we'll value the business and we'll start going to market, and then they'll tell their CPA about it, and they're like, "Oh, what's your asking price?" And what are you? They'll start asking questions, or they'll ask their CPA, "Yeah, this guy at Bison, he says it's worth $2.5 million, and we're taking it to market," and they'll spit out their coffee and be like, $2.5 million? Your business is worth way more than that. And I'm like, well, ask your CPA if he'll pay you $3 million for it. And he won't. Like nobody will. But on the other side, the second you're under contract to sell, and the buyer's CPA says, "Man, I just went under contract for $2.5 million on this company." They're like, "Really?" And they look at the same company, but if they're the buyer's CPA, they say, "Oh my gosh, you're getting robbed. It's not worth $2.5 million." I've never had a case, like, I'm talking hundreds of times, when the seller asks their CPA, "What is my business worth?" it's always worth more. When a buyer asks about the business they're buying, it's always worth less than what they're paying. Like, it makes me insane, but it's like the most predictable thing in the world.
And I don't see, like, to your point, I could see AI really enabling you to serve a lot more clients by, better intake, better management of data, blah, blah. But I don't know, unless you're going to get like an AI robot that like counsels people. Like, I don't know how you actually use it to sell more businesses, because I agree. I think most of it's getting them through that journey.
The decision to sell is usually an emotional decision, and it's usually for personal reasons. And that's what is so crazy about this industry is, and I tell people this too, is don't come into this game. Like, if we're talking about business brokerage as a business, and you got listeners that are thinking, "Hey, I want to do this or not do this." Like, if you just see, "Hey, I think I can make money and get fees," and you're chasing the dollar signs, but you don't feel like called to help people, like, don't come into this game, because you're gonna, A, probably not be very good at it, and B, gonna hurt a lot of people chasing fees. Whether a business sells for a 2x or a 5x or whatever of discretionary earnings, the business seller can always say, "Why am I selling? I could just keep it for 2 years and make 2x, or I could keep it for 5 years and make 5x. Mathematically, that's true. It usually doesn't mathematically make sense. Like, if you turn a 4x multiple into a cap rate, it's a 25 cap, or you can't go invest that money into real estate and get a 25 cap. You can't really invest it in the stock market and expect 25%.
Yeah, until you're up above 10 plus times, your money is always going to be better in the business.
Yeah. So why are you selling?
That has to be a driver.
Yeah. The reason why is always an emotional, personal reason. It's, I'm burnt out. I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. My wife's about to leave me if I hold on to this business for one more year.
A lot of it's retirement because your wife is banging on. Like I've heard that a lot of the older guys.
Or I was holding on to this because I thought my kid was going to take it over, and they finally told me straight up last week, Dad, I'm never going to take it over. And they were emotionally invested in that. They've been thinking for a decade this was going to be their kid's business, going to be their family legacy, and they just got told by their beloved only child that they're not going to take it over, and they'll never take it over, and they don't want to be like them, and they don't want their life. And so you walk into those situations, and it's a very sensitive thing. It's people are selling or buying businesses, really both sides, because they want a change in their life. Like they're trying to turn a new chapter in their life, and for a period of time, they need someone to help them turn a brand new chapter that changes everything in their life. And so if you don't feel like the sacredness of that or like the seriousness of that, don't be a business broker.
Those are profound words, Clint. I think we're going to close the episode with that. That was awesome. Well, thanks for being on today, Clint. And if people want to reach out, you're online, you're on X, obviously, Clint Fiore. And your website is what?
Bisonbusiness.com.
Excellent.
And then my handle everywhere is just my name, Clint Fiore, ClintFiore.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Clint. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan.
You've been listening to the Small Business Mentor podcast, brought to you by Alan Pentz. For more insights on how to navigate your business through its black holes, visit @apentz on X. Don't forget to search for Small Business Mentor in your podcast app to subscribe. Thank you for joining us, and here's to your next leap in business growth.